Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Bol. Amit Prabhu, you're in Vrindavan, right?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Hare Hare. Okay, let's just give a minute before we start. Hare
Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanachalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parjana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Shadhanvitam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Saptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Shubhanuste Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone. Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Radhanath Swami Namne Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namne Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Vishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshapalini Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Giri Padamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Yom Tat Sat. Hare Krishna. Sorry, just give me 1 minute. I'm trying to read something. Okay. Hare Bol. So, thank you all for joining. I'm grateful to all of you. Because of you, I'm getting an opportunity to recite these wonderful pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, and in that way getting purified. As I've mentioned multiple times, technically there is no spiritual difference between chanting or speaking about the Lord and hearing about the Lord. Actually, there's no difference. You can get as much benefit as the person who is speaking. Actually, there is no difference at a spiritual platform. But there is one benefit in being a speaker. Actually, two benefits in being a speaker. One is that when we are playing the role of a speaker, we have no choice but to be fully absorbed in the katha. As a listener, we have a choice. Probably speaking something in the middle, I'll hear a little bit here and there. Otherwise, I'll be busy doing my things. Or I will keep my video off so nobody knows what is going on behind the scenes. Now, not that I'm judging any of you or criticizing any of you. I'm just saying that it is so easy to not be absorbed. This is not a criticism or a judgment. I'm just saying that I cannot do that because I'm playing the role of the speaker. So that is the benefit when we are doing the katha. It is easy for us to be absorbed. I cannot put up a show. I cannot not be absorbed. So in that way, even though technically the opportunity for making progress is equal on both sides, unless the listeners are also equally absorbed, they can of course be more absorbed than the speaker also. That is possible. But if that absorption is not there, then the benefit will not be to the same extent. Of course, there is benefit even if the words fall on our ears. And second is, of course, Krishna says that when we speak about his glories and enlighten others about his glories, then obviously the Lord gives special blessings for those who share his glories with others. But anyway, I'm just mentioning this just so that I can express my gratitude to all of you that because you are all listening, I am getting this opportunity to recite these wonderful pastimes. I'm truly not in any way qualified to speak about such lofty topics. But since Srila Prabhupada has given this to us and asked all of us to read it, based on his blessings, permission, we are making an endeavor. Lord Krishna's pastimes, which are so difficult to understand, especially the confidential pastime, the same Krishna, when he comes in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his pastimes become so much more easily approachable for all living entities, especially for fallen conditioned souls like all of us. For example, the greatest of Lord Krishna's Leelas, which is the Rasa Leela, actually such a high elevated topic, the highest of the elevated topics. It is a topic for discussion for the Paramhamsas, which definitely I am not one of them. I don't know amongst the 20 of you if anyone is. But the same Ras Leela of Krishna Leela is manifested in the form of Sankirtan in Gaura Leela. And that Sankirtan Leela is very accessible to us. We can participate in it today, now, in our conditions. So why I'm mentioning this is Krishna has made himself so much more accessible to conditioned souls like us in his form of Lord Chaitanya by manifesting that Krishna Leela in a slightly different way, where he becomes approachable and accessible to ordinary people of Kali Yuga. And in that way, the Lord extends himself to pick us up from a very, very low fallen state. And if we cooperate with him and follow his process, he will uplift us all the way to enter into the topmost Leelas of Vraja. So it's actually up to us how seriously we all take this very, very special opportunity. So please be mindful of this. So today we are continuing our discussion of Gaur Leela. We have come to the concluding chapter of the Adi Leela, which is chapter 17. This chapter is entitled The Youthful Pastimes of the Lord. if you remember, the last 5 chapters of the Adi Lila, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, are the Lord's Lila, the childhood, beginning with his appearance, his Balya Lila. After Balya comes, what Lila? Anybody remembers?
Oganda.
Pauganda, very good. Pauganda is what age to what age? Balya is up to what age?
I think it's up to 5. Oganda is 5 to 11.
Yeah, around 5 to 10. Then after Pauganda Lila is which Lila?
Kaishora.
Kaishora. Yes, Kaishora is from around
10 to 15.
correct, up to 10 to 15. Thank you, Amit. And the Lord's youthful Leela begins from 16 onwards. Correct. So, as we have mentioned multiple times, the Adi Leela concludes with the Lord's acceptance of sannyas. Of course, the Lord has performed millions and millions of pastimes, out of which probably only a drop has been described. Nobody can record all the pastimes that the Lord manifests, because the Lord, moment to moment, is performing millions of pastimes in interaction with millions of devotees. Nobody can capture a log of all these pastimes. So some prominent pastimes have been recorded to some detail, so that we can be purified. The youthful Leela is actually very extensive. The youthful Leela of the Lord, 16 years onward, is when the Lord was already manifest as a Pandita. We discussed some of these aspects in terms of his being a Pandit, especially the early years of being a Pandit, which were this beautiful pastime of defeating Keshava Kashmiri, of how the Lord established himself as the one who defeated the Digvijay Pandit in a very humble way. We discussed that he was a great devotee of Mother Saraswati, but he was crushed. Actually, he was not crushed, his pride was crushed. The thing is, we are so strongly associated with our pride that when our pride is crushed, we feel we are crushed. But if you are humble, then we will not feel crushed. When we realize that Krishna is the ability in man, the same Arjun who fought the most powerful warriors on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, after the battle of Kurukshetra, after Krishna disappeared from the planet, he could not even fight. He was passing through the forest, even with some ordinary forest dwellers who were carrying sticks. He was shocked, saying that I am the same Arjuna, I am the same with the same Gandiva, the same Ratha, the same everything. The only difference is Krishna is not with me. See, all my power has disappeared. Now, that is a very detailed pastime. I don't want to go into that right now, so I'm mentioning it in brief. But the point is that ultimately we are all empowered by the Lord to whatever extent. And that's why actually when we reflect on this properly, we will come to the realization that all opulences, all ability are ultimately bestowed on us by the Lord because of our either karmic situation or spiritual blessings, whatever the reason may be. Ultimately, the Lord is the reservoir of all ability, all opulences. It doesn't make sense logically for us to be proud. That's the nature of material illusion. A little bit extraordinary ability and we become proud. Anyway, so Keshav Kashmiri was eventually transformed. He became a great devotee. So the Lord's youthful pastimes began with 16 onwards with this height of success and went on all the way up to his taking sannyas. We already discussed how in the previous chapter itself, the Lord, it is mentioned that the Lord's first consort. What is the name of the Lord's first consort? Anybody remembers?
Lakshmi Devi.
Lakshmi Priya, yes, Lakshmi Devi. And who did the Lord marry subsequently?
Vishnu Priya.
Vishnu Priya Devi. Very good. Yeah. So the Lord was manifesting his pastimes of Grahastha after he came back from the tour of East Bengal. In his absence, Lakshmi Devi had departed, and then on Mother Sachi's insistence, married for the second time. This very, very chaste, noble lady, Vishnu Priya Devi. Very great devotee. Sometime we'll discuss about her. I think those pastimes will come later. Amazing, amazing. So, this particular section, this particular chapter itself is very long. It's over 300 verses. Over 300 verses. So, this is the first very long chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So much, for most of the chapters so far, just above 100 verses or just around 100 verses. Suddenly, why? Because in this period, in this youthful period, which is actually summarized by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, many wonderful pastimes happen. Many wonderful pastimes happen. And they are so condensed into this chapter because those pastimes have been discussed in great detail in Chaitanya Bhagavad, Chaitanya Mangal, and they have been so condensed here. Some of these pastimes, which are 1 hour pastimes for detailed discussion, are condensed into 1 or 2 shlokas. So this is a very action-packed chapter. But, and I was going through the chapter and I was thinking, oh Lord, what to speak of. Originally, I was thinking that I will cover this chapter in 3 classes. Not in 1 class, 3 classes. First 100, second 100, and third 100. But then I was thinking now that to complete first 100 verses is so difficult. Because when I was going through the pastimes, even though it is mentioned in 2 lines, in my mind, the 1 hour class is coming. 2 shlokas. Yeah, because there is so much detail. Of course, not all of these details are on top of my head. So I've heard these pastimes so long ago, roughly 30 years ago. But quite a bit is still fresh in my mind. So I'm not going to describe all these pastimes in great detail, but for some of these pastimes, I'm going to add a little bit more than what is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. For more detailed katha, we will have to go back to Chaitanya Bhagavad, which Krishna willing and Mahaprabhu willing, someday we will do. So how many shlokas I'm going to cover today, I really do not know. So I decided not to pressure myself, but to go with the flow. Whatever Mahaprabhu inspires and whatever my ability allows me, I will try to endeavor to try to share that and to serve all of you. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami as usual begins this chapter. Every chapter he begins by offering obeisances to the Lord and glorifying Lord Chaitanya. And somebody he says Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is so great. He says that by his mercy, even the most fallen, unclean Yavanas means those who are unclean, they become perfect gentlemen by the process of chanting the holy name of the Lord. That is the glory of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And we see this, right? In fact, as the representative of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Srila Prabhupada precisely performed this pastime. Paschatya Deshatarine, delivering the people of the Western world. Who are the people of the Western world? Mleccha and Yavana. Delivered them. And through the chanting of the holy name, so many of them have become such great devotees that some of them have even become spiritual masters. So this verse is proven. So all glories to Lord Chaitanya, all glories to Lord Nityananda, all glories to Advaita Acharya, and all glories to all the devotees of Lord Chaitanya. So the Lord's youthful pastimes is essentially a continuation of the Kaishor Lila of the Lord's pastimes as a scholar and a teacher. And the main features, we have mentioned this in the previous classes also, the main features of this age is that the Lord displayed his panditya, his extraordinary learning. And the Lord exhibited it through debate. And the Lord was so good at debate, people would run away from him when they would see Vishwambhar, Nimai Pandit coming from the other side. If another Pandit was coming, he would see and then he would turn around and start going in another direction. The Lord would say, oh, wait, where you are going, No, I suddenly remembered something, I have to go somewhere else. And he would go that direction. Because Lord Chaitanya would be so fond of establishing his panditya, like what I mentioned earlier, he would argue on our point. He would provoke a debate. And then he would defeat the other person. And when the other person would be defeated and he would accept defeat, the Lord would say, no, what I just told you is not correct. And then the Lord would defeat the position that he had just established. And the person said, yeah, that's correct. That was not correct, but I thought it was correct. But now what you're saying is correct. Then Lord Chaitanya would defeat what he had just said. And then he would establish a third position. And this would go on until that person's head would start spinning. So the Lord's learning, the Lord's analytical abilities, linguistic abilities are unlimited. No ordinary living entity can fathom the depth of the Lord's knowledge. So the Lord exhibited his scholarship. The Lord, because he was a Grihastha, exhibited his beauty. Gaura Sundar. This Lila, the Lord is known as Gaura Sundar or Gaura Chandra. So my name, my spiritual master has given as Gaura Chandra Das. Because Lord Chaitanya and Lord Krishna's beauty is compared to a Chandra, a full moon. Sometimes is referred to as Gaura Chandra, sometimes is referred to as Gaura Sundar. The beautiful fair one, Gaura Sundar. The beautiful moon-like Lord Gaura, Gaura Chandra. So the Lord displayed, especially in his youth. Of course, the Lord is always beautiful, but especially in his youth, he is beautiful. Why his beauty was more pronounced? Because he had beautiful long hair, dense black curling hair. And he would also decorate himself in his Grihastha Lila. Very, very beautiful clothing. See, this is one of the attributes of Krishna, and of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu being Krishna himself. One of the special qualities of Krishna is an expert dresser. He wears his clothes. Sometimes, there are people who are so meticulous in the way they wear their clothes. You will think like, they are so perfect in the way they dress. Each and every fold of their cloth is so perfect. So the Lord is like that. Perfect dresser, very meticulous dresser. And he would decorate himself with ornaments and garlands and sandalwood pulp. And seeing the Lord stroll through the streets in his divine pastimes of Nimai Pandit was a feast for the eyes and a feast for the heart. Except for the Pandits whom he would challenge. And interesting enough, some of the individuals whom he would challenge would not just challenge the ordinary Pandits, but even some of the devotees he would challenge. If I am not wrong, and I stand to be corrected, he would debate sometimes with Murari Gupta, and he would definitely debate with Gadadhar Pandit. Actually, as these thoughts come in my mind, I remember all those pastimes, but I'm controlling myself to avoid going in that. Otherwise, I will remain on verse number 3 of the chapter and the class will end. So, those things we'll discuss some other day. But the Lord would have such beautiful exchanges with them. And they would be some of these devotees would be so even though they would be harassed by the Lord in this way, the devotees would be so amazed and they would wonder, this person is so learned, so learned. Why is he wasting his time in this kind of dry debate? Yes, he's defeating us, but we are not bothered whether he defeats us or not. But he's so extraordinarily intelligent. Why is he wasting his intelligence on this kind of mundane debate? Instead of this mundane debate, if he was a devotee of Lord Krishna, it would be so wonderful. It would be so wonderful. So they were all thinking in their mind, the devotees were thinking, those who were already devotees were thinking, only if this Nimai Pandit will become a devotee. Then if he becomes a devotee, everybody else will become a devotee because he is so extraordinary. So these beautiful pastimes would happen. And sometimes when devotees, I think it was Gadadhar Pandit who was once running away from Lord Chaitanya, not wanting to engage in debate. And Lord Chaitanya from behind was shouting at them and saying that, oh, you all are running from me today. But you just wait and see. The day will soon come that I will become such a great devotee of the Lord, that even Brahma and Lord Shiva will come to worship me. So you wait. And they couldn't understand what this Nimai Pandit is saying. They couldn't relate to him. Because this was the time before Nimai Pandit manifested his Lila as a great devotee. So in this way, the Lord displayed his scholarship, his beauty, his fine dress. He would also occasionally chant and dance and awaken love for Krishna. So sometimes in this period, the Lord would also sometimes go into ecstatic mood, because what the Lord would do is, when the Lord would be teaching grammar, he would teach grammar often using the names of Krishna. And sometimes the Lord, when he would hear about Krishna, when he would discuss about Krishna, the Lord would suddenly feel so ecstatic that the Lord will roll on the ground in ecstasy, and tears will come and he will almost faint. And nobody could understand what has gone wrong with the Lord. Especially Mother Sachi, she would be so worried. She would, think, oh, what is wrong? And they would all think that the Lord has got a fit, like an epileptic fit, and that's why he's rolling on the ground like that. Actually, the Lord would be rolling in ecstasy. But the Lord did not want to manifest himself as a devotee at that point in time, so he wouldn't reveal that. And then they would sometimes call the Ayurvedic Vaidya and he would examine and this and that. And then later when the Lord would come back into external consciousness, the Lord would say, no, nothing, I just had an imbalance in my airs. So sometimes certain diseases come about in the body because of imbalance in the kapha, vata, pitta, or imbalance in the pranas in the body, and this kind of fits may come. So the Lord would pretend as if he was suffering from some disease of prana imbalance. But actually the Lord would display his ecstatic, his ecstasies sometimes, even during this period. Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami also briefly mentions that the Lord also bestowed Krishna Prem on his mother Sachi Devi. Now, this pastime is not perhaps mentioned very chronologically here, but nonetheless, because it is mentioned in this sequence, I will just briefly mention it here. Sachimata was a bit upset with Lord with Advaita Acharya. The reason for her being upset is because Vishwarupa, was the elder brother of Lord Chaitanya, had taken sannyas by regularly associating with Advaita Acharya. And then when Lord Chaitanya also started associating regularly with Advaita Acharya, she became so worried that her second son also may take sannyas. So she became so worried that at one time, out of her intense motherly affection and her fear of losing Vishwambhar also, she criticizes Advaita Acharya by saying that this Advaita Acharya is not Advaita, he's Dvaita. Dvaita means duplicitous. So on one hand, basically what she was saying, on one hand, he's pretending to be a well-wisher, but on the other hand, he's taking my son away from me. So of course, she was not meaning anything offensive, but out of her love and her concern for her son, she spoke like this. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that, oh, Advaita Acharya is such a great devotee, and my mother, Sachi Mata, has committed an offense to a Vaishnav by criticizing him. And I never forgive anybody who is criticizing Vaishnavas. So because Mother Sachi has criticized Advaita Acharya, I will not give her Krishna Prem. And everybody was shocked. All the associates of Lord Chaitanya, they were saying, oh Lord, how can you do like that? Sachi Mata is the mother of the universe. She is the incarnation of Yashoda. How can you say you will not give love for God? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would not be moved by any appeal. No? Rule is rule for everybody. Whoever offends a pure devotee of the Lord, I will not give them Krishna Prem. So I'll withhold. So they asked, so what is the upay? What is the solution? The only solution to Vaishnava Aparadh is that if the devotee who is offended, he forgives. So he says, only if she can get the dust of the feet of Advaita Acharya on her head, then her offense will get forgiven. Advaita Acharya will never allow Sachi Mata to take the dust of his feet. Because for Advaita Acharya, who was in the mood of a servant of Lord Chaitanya, Sachi Mata is worshipable. He would consider her as the mother of the universe. How will he allow her to touch the feet? So now I'm describing this pastime in a slightly bigger detail. It's not described in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So on another day, one day, Advaita Acharya was rolling in ecstasy on the ground. I'll not go into that pastime in detail now. As he was rolling in ecstasy on the ground, Mother Sachi took the opportunity, knowing of the offense she had committed, she touched the feet of Advaita Acharya and took the dust of the feet of Advaita Acharya and put on her. And then Lord Chaitanya said, now her offense is nullified, and now I will bestow Krishna Prem on her. So the point that the Acharyas make here is that the Lord is very serious about Vaishnava Aparadh. Sins can easily be overcome by chanting the holy name, but aparadhs cannot be easily overcome even through devotional service, especially if they are serious Vaishnava aparadhs. And that is why throughout Chaitanya Charitamrita, not just this Lila, but throughout the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Lord has established again and again and again how dangerous it is to offend and criticize the pure devotees of the Lord. So that is why it is best to be very careful not to judge the great souls and criticize them. And if accidentally we have done so, we must make it a point to beg for their forgiveness and in that way become rid of the offense. Because if we don't get rid of from that offense, not only will we get reactions, it is not the reactions or the pain or the suffering that will come because of it. That is one aspect. The bigger consequence for us as sadhakas is that we will continuously experience impediments in our bhajan, in our spiritual advancement, in our sadhana. unless we overcome these kind of offenses and we get forgiveness. We will not be able to make spiritual progress. So actually, it is spiritual suicide. It is self-sabotage of one's own spiritual advance. That is why one should be very, very careful. Anyway, so this is a one verse which we spoke about for quite some time. That too in brief. So after this particular episode, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that Lord Chaitanya also had a meeting with Advaita Acharya in private, and that particular meeting, Advaita Acharya asked Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for a favor, because Lord Chaitanya revealed his position as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he asked Advaita Acharya, what is it that you want? So Advaita Acharya said, I have one desire. What is it, Advaita? Nara. Huh? You would call him Nara, like that. Oh, Nara, tell me, what is it that you want? Lord Chaitanya would say. So, Lord, I have just one desire. That particular form that you showed to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, that universal form, which is described in chapter 11 of the Bhagavad Gita. I want to see that form. Oh, that's all. See, the whole place transformed into the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And Lord Chaitanya suddenly transformed to Krishna, from Krishna to Vishwarupa. And he gave that splendorous opulent darshan of the Vishwarupa, satisfy that he had a vision of the universal. Then there is another very, very beautiful pastime where at the house of Shrivas, the house of Shrivas is actually very, very special. So Shrivas Thakur was a very close associate of Lord Chaitanya. The house of Shrivas, Advaita had a house in Shantipur and also had a house in Mayapur. So the house of Shrivas Thakur, the house of Sachimata, Mahaprabhu, house of Advaita are quite nearby. I think many of you would have visited Mayapur. They would have seen Shrivas Angan, which is the house of Shrivas Thakur, very close to Yogpit. And just next to it is the house of Advaita. So in Shrivas Angan, and Shrivas and Malini is the wife of Shrivas Thakur. Shrivas Thakur is the incarnation of Narada Muni. He's one of the Panchatattva, representative of the pure devotee. Lord Chaitanya would perform beautiful kirtan in his home, and this is also described later in this chapter itself. So the Lord would perform very regularly. Every evening, the Lord would come to the house of Shrivas Thakur and perform very, very beautiful pastimes. Now, before all this happened, sorry, I missed an important thing to mention. Sorry, my bad. What actually led to the transition of the Lord being transitioning from Nimai Pandit to being a devotee? Sorry, I missed that part. So, like what I mentioned earlier, the Lord would sometimes display ecstasies, but would conceal them as ecstasies. Would deliberately conceal his nature as the Supreme Personality of Godhead or as a devotee and just display his Lila as a Pandit. But then at one point in his manifest Lila, in his youthful pastimes, the Lord decided to go to Gaya to perform the Shraddha rites for his departed father, Jagannath Mishra. Now for the Hindus, it is said every year we should perform the Shraddha for the ancestors. And especially it is considered, Gaya is considered the most powerful place spiritually to perform the Shraddha for the ancestors. And Gaya is very, very powerful because Lord Vishnu's footprints, personal footprints, lotus footprints, are imprinted in stone in Gaya. So there's a very, very beautiful, prominent temple known as the Vishnupad Mandir, which is where devotees go and take darshan. So it is said that one's ancestors will be delivered if one performs the Shraddha ceremony at Gaya. So Lord Chaitanya had gone to Gaya. Now, by the arrangement of providence, of course, when we say providence, it is the Lord's own supreme desire. When Nimai Pandit was there, the temple of Vishnupad, a very great sannyasi by the name of Ishwarapuri, who was the disciple of the great devotee Madhavendra Puri, was present personally in the temple of Vishnupad. So, the Lord, when he went there to Gaya, when the Lord saw the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu at Gaya, the Lord transformed from a debating Brahmana to a lover of God. Nimai Pandit's heart melted, and as he was seeing the Vishnupad, tears were coming, and he was uncontrollably crying in ecstasy on seeing the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and singing beautiful praises. Ishwar Puri, who was there, he also observed this extraordinary symptoms displayed by Nimai Pandit, and then they interacted with each other later, and he came to know that, oh, this is Nimai Pandit, this Nimai Pandit is the son of Jagannath Mishra and Sachi Mata, and Ishwarapuri remembered, oh, I had come long back. I had come and visited your home. And I still remember when I had visited your home many, many years ago, your mother, Sachi Mata, had received me and served me so nicely. I still remember that particular sabji that she had made that particular day, and it was so wonderful. And he described the sabji which he had eaten decades ago. Because it was not just a sabji, it was such a transcendental offering by Sachi Mata, who's actually Mother Yashoda herself. He was so affected by the love and the ecstasy of eating that prasad from the hands of Sachi Mata. So anyway, they had this wonderful interaction. And then Nimai Pandit fell at the feet of Ishwarapuri and begged him that my life is useless if I do not receive shelter of the spiritual master. So please accept me as your disciple and initiate me into the real goal of life. So Ishwar Puri very gladly initiated Lord Chaitanya. Of course, there are many details, but we don't have time to go into that. That's just mentioned as one line in this chapter. So he was initiated by Ishwar Puri, and Ishwar Puri instructed him to chant the holy names of the Lord. So it is from this point of visiting Gaya and getting initiation from Ishwarapuri that this Nimai Pandit suddenly transformed to be a lover of God. And when he came back from Gaya, from then onwards, everybody could see that now Nimai Pandit is a totally transformed individual. He would be mad in intoxication of love of God. He can think of nothing but Krishna. Everything he would speak, somebody is speaking something else, also he'll connect it to Krishna. So everybody saw this amazing transformation. They're wondering what is it that this has happened? How this great logician, Sanskrit grammar scholar, Nimai Pandit has transformed into such a great devotee. The devotees were surprised. The devotees, Advaita, Murari Gupta, Gadadhar Pandit, Haridas Thakur, all these devotees who would get together and discuss Bhagavad Katha, they were praying that one day Nimai Pandit should become devotee, and they saw that Nimai is transformed. They were all so jubilant and so happy. And they were so happy to bring this Nimai Pandit, Vishwambhar, Gaura Sundar, Gaura Chandra into their association. Because now he had become not just a devotee, but he had become the topmost of all devotees. That he had become the central figure and everybody was looking for inspiration and his association. And he would lead them in Sankirtan. Of course, Advaita Acharya, Srivas and others very soon realized that Advaita Acharya realized that he is the Lord that I have been praying for. Because until that particular point in time, the Lord concealed this knowledge of his real identity from everybody else, including the devotees, including Advaita Acharya. After this, the Lord revealed his real identity. So from then onwards, the Lord would regularly associate with Advaita, Srivas, and all the other devotees, and regularly they would get together, discuss Bhagavatam. Regularly they would get together in the house of Srivas Thakur, do kirtans all through the night. And that is how this association developed. So after that, all these pastimes that I just mentioned manifested, which is, Sachi Mata offending Advaita Acharya, and then Srivas Thakur, at whose home the Lord would regularly appear. There was this beautiful pastime that once the Lord manifested his Lila. Normally the Lord would be in the mood of a devotee, but he would manifest his mood of the Lord, and he was willing to be done Abhishek by the devotees. So the Lord was sitting on a cot, displaying his transcendental opulence, and Srivas Thakur and all the devotees were doing Abhishek. They were pouring water from the Ganges one after another, and the Lord was accepting all their worship. So there was very few moments that Lord Chaitanya, even though normally he would manifest his Leela as a devotee only, sometimes in private with very, very close associates, the Lord would come into the mood of the Lord himself. And when he would come into that mood, he would accept seva, worship from the others, and he would also give very, very special blessings. So this very, very special Leela happened at the house of Srivas Thakur. It is said almost for 21 hours continuously this Leela happened, where the Lord was continuously being worshipped, offerings, Abhishek, and so many kinds of worship. And the Lord was giving different blessings to different devotees. That is described also in great detail in Chaitanya Bhagavad. So I'm only on verse 11 for your information. Out of the 100 verses, and I still feel I'm skipping so much. So something interesting would happen that, of course, the Lord would. One thing I just wanted to mention before I go to verse 12 and verse 13. The Lord and the devotees would often gather, like what I mentioned, in Srivas Thakur's house. But there was something else which was happening in parallel. As the Lord and the devotees would gather and perform Sankirtan, there would also be so many people who would criticize the Lord. See, the thing is, in those days, Navadvip was not filled with Vaishnavas. In fact, the majority of the residents of Navadvip were materialistic demigod worshippers. They would be worshipping various devatas for materialistic purposes. either some tantric worship or some lower forms of worship for materialistic purposes. And some of them would become critical of the Harinam Sankirtan of Lord Chaitanya and the devotees. And the Lord was a bit sensitive of this criticism. He didn't want these devotees to, one, to be offensive because it will be bad for them. And the Lord also did not want that the kirtan that he would have with the devotees be disturbed in any way by these unqualified people. So it is said that during the day, the devotees would come together and discuss Hari Katha. And then one day, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "Oh, actually, throughout the day, we are discussing Hari Katha. But don't you all feel we are wasting the night? We're just sleeping through the night. Why are we wasting the time at night in sleeping? Why don't we instead do kirtan?" And all devotees said, "Oh, this is such a wonderful idea. Never thought of this. Yeah, daytime we can discuss Hari Katha. All through the night we'll do kirtan." I don't know how many of us will agree to any such proposition. Anyway, they are all eternal associates of the Lord. They all were very excited. They said, "Yes, yes, yes." And then every night, Lord Chaitanya and all these associates would gather at the house of Srivas Thakur. And all through the night, they would do kirtan. They would close the doors. Nobody else would be, other than the close, intimate associates, nobody else would be allowed in. And they would perform very, very sweet pastimes of kirtan. And the Lord would dance so beautifully, so beautifully. Anyway, that's a topic for another day. We'll not go into that. But I'm just setting the background of what was happening in Navadvip at that period of time. So this is what was the thing. And of course, many people in general, including Brahmanas, were not happy. Because first of all, some of them were critical of Lord Chaitanya. Some of them were not critical. They were not devotees, but they at least wanted to be allowed to come in the house of Srivas Thakur and witness the dancing. But they were not allowed. That night, Srivas Thakur would lock the doors. Even if the Brahmanas and others would come, he said, "No, no entry. Only special pass. Only if you have received our direct message that you are invited, only then you can be allowed in. Otherwise, no entry." Some of them would be very upset and some of them would become very critical. Anyway, those pastimes we'll discuss hopefully next week. So these kind of pastimes would happen. But soon after the pastime at Srivas Angan, where the Lord was worshipped, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami said also the pastime of the arrival of Lord Nityananda happened. So Lord Nityananda, I'll briefly mention, we have 5 minutes, I'll conclude by mentioning this. This is also important to understand. If you recollect, Lord Nityananda who appeared in Eka Chakra, Lord Nityananda is roughly, I think 11, 12 years elder to Lord Chaitanya from an external material perspective in terms of the manifest pastime. And if you recollect, we had mentioned this long back that Lord Nityananda, he appeared in Ek Chakra to Hadai Pandit and Padmavati, and later a great sannyasi by the name of Shankararanya Swami, he came and he took Nitai as a helper for himself for his pilgrimage and traveled with him throughout India. So Nityanand Prabhu for a long time was traveling with this sannyasi. He spent his time in various places all over India. And then it is said he came to the area of Mathura and resided in the area of Mathura for some time. When he was in the area of Mathura, news reached Nityananda Prabhu that Lord Chaitanya has manifested his devotee pastimes in Navadvip. And Nityananda Prabhu was just waiting because he had come for that purpose only. But the plan was that once the Lord manifests his pastimes as a devotee, then he will go and join him. So he was waiting in Mathura when the Lord will manifest his pastimes. So after the Lord came back from Gaya and he manifested himself as a devotee, and soon after that, Lord Nityananda, he decided to travel. So he came from Mathura and he came to Mayapur. So when he came to Mayapur, he came to the house of a devotee by the name of Nandana Acharya. Nandana Acharya's house is located along the bank of the Jalangi. It's very close to the ISKCON Mayapur temple. On the other side, Shiva Sangan is on one side, Nandana Acharya's house is on the other side. There is a very nice temple there at the house of Nandana Acharya. Many of us have visited there. Nityananda Prabhu came to that house and he hid himself. Hid himself in the sense that he came to Nandanacharya's house and he told Nandanacharya that nobody should know that I am here. So Lord Chaitanya, of course, nothing can be hidden from him. So he told all the devotees, Advaita, Haridas, Srivas, and all the other devotees that, oh, a great personality, Avadhut has appeared in our town, our Mayapur. Go and look for him and bring him here. So they all went and looked everywhere and scanned the whole area, but they couldn't find him. They came to Lord Chaitanya and said, nobody like this has come. He said, no, go and find him. Went again all over, they couldn't find him. Then Lord Chaitanya himself went straight to the house of Nandanacharya and went face to face to Lord Nityananda, who was waiting to be reunited with Lord Chaitanya. And said, oh, why you are hiding here? And then that was a very, very beautiful union of Gaura and Nitai, this beautiful manifest pastimes. So it was a very, very beautiful scene. They embraced each other and they were crying tears of love and bathing each other with their tears. That's at the house of Nandanacharya. And Lord Chaitanya introduced later Nityananda Prabhu to Sachi Mata. He told Sachi Mata that please consider him as my brother, as your other son. So that is why Sachi Mata would treat Gaura and Nitai as her sons. Actually, Nityananda is the original Balram, and actually Lord Chaitanya's elder brother, Vishwarupa, is a partial incarnation of Balram because he was the incarnation of Sankarshan. So actually, in one sense, you can say the origin of Vishwarupa, Lord Chaitanya's elder brother, is actually Nitai. So in that sense, Sankarshan or Vishwarupa came back. So Sachi Mata could relate like that. She would see in Nitai that her elder son has come back. Something like that. So Sachi Mata would serve or enjoy to serve by cooking food to Gaur and Nitai. So in that way, Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda got reunited. And then they would all perform these beautiful pastimes in the house of Srivas Thakur together with Advaita Acharya and all the others. So this was verse 12. The last 10 minutes, 15 minutes that we discussed. I think I'll stop here. It's 9:59. So we'll continue from verse 13 of the 17th chapter. So it's a very beautiful chapter. Like what I said, each of these verses has so many details, so many pastimes. So I'm really, really, really shrinking But please do give me a feedback. Do you find this useful, or should I go through it faster? Because my purpose is to serve you, whatever way you all feel better served. I am fine with that. So opening up the floor if there is any questions or comments. Yes, Suresh. Prabhu.
Yeah, Prabhuji, I have a general question.
Hmm.
See, here, we want to offer seva to God, right? Is that seva being offered at a material level or soul level? Like, I just want to cite one example because I've seen in some famous temples, devotee has offered one seva, and by the time he gets the date for that seva, right, the devotee will not be there. So when they write the names of the devotee, they will just write late this person, right?
Hmm.
This is and the other question is, let's take if a person has wish to offer a seva and the person is not there, can their relatives offer the same seva? So is it accepted?
Yeah, so in general, seva is of course at a spiritual level. So not at the bodily level. In the sense that it is spiritual because it's a matter of intention. It is not just about the external performance of a ritual. Of course, it is best that if we perform the service ourselves, that is best, because in that way our absorption and offering is best. But if for whatever reason it is not possible for the individual not offer that seva, rather he gives Lakshmi and gets that seva. Because some sevas we cannot offer ourselves. For example, some who cannot do a puja by themselves may, give Lakshmi to the temple or to the pujari to get that particular seva done. So those kind of sevas are also considered acceptable and can be done in the absence of the individual devotee also. But of course, it's important that the devotee doesn't have the consciousness of I just will give money and I have forgotten. Because ultimately the Lord is interested not in the external offering of the ritual. The Lord is interested in how much heart, with our heart, we are offering something for His pleasure. That is what actually gives pleasure to the Lord, not just the external performance of the ritual. So yes, in general, yes. And also, yes, we can offer service on behalf of somebody else, even after they have, if we dedicate the fruits of a particular seva to the devotee, then to some individual, whether a devotee or not, the Lord will arrange for the benefit of that particular seva to be directed to that particular individual for whom it was intended. So that is also considered acceptable. In fact, that is the whole idea behind the Shraddha ceremony. The idea of the Shraddha ceremony is that Vishnu Prasad, the pinda which is offered to Vishnu first, and then the prasad of Vishnu is offered as a prasad to the deceased soul. And by accepting that prasad, the ancestor is delivered. So that is also a form of benefiting. So all form of prayers for deceased soul, if we do some dan for a deceased soul, all that is accepted by the Shastras as beneficial.
Yeah. Good.
Hari Hari.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, Hari Bol. Jai. So we'll continue our discussion, and I will see you all on Saturday, where we will aim to start the discussion of the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. Thank you all very much. Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai, Gaur Nitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveta Gaura Bhakta Vranda.
Jai.
Hari Bol. Thank you.